another casual stroll through Lord of the Rings Online. My name's Matt Elliott. I go by Scenario on message boards, and I'm a senior world designer on Lord of the Rings Online. I've been doing it for, 15 or so years now. It has been a lot of fun working on this project. A lot of people are probably familiar with this stream, but just as kind of a recap and intro, this is a world design focused stream. We'll be going through a portion of the landscape of Middle-earth and talking purely about world design, level design, and things associated on that front. I'm not here to answer any questions about things like game systems, class balance, PvMP, those sorts of things. That's not my venue, that's not what I work on. And I'm not comfortable answering those kinds of questions. But if you have any questions about world design, about the region that we're going to be walking through, and just like what it takes to make the world of Middle-earth in general, feel free to ask them here. As I also always remind people, if you don't see me take a drink of water every so often, please remind me to do so, because otherwise my voice is going to be dying, and I have a bunch of meetings later this afternoon. With that in mind, let's get started with our tour. So last time we did a tour, last time we did a casual stroll, we put it up to a vote, and we still have 2 remaining regions of Eriador left to explore. But with the timing of everything, it felt right to do a tour, a preview of the Yondershire, one of our newest region additions, a new low-level region, and personally, for me, one of the biggest things coming with it is connecting Ered Luin to the Shire, so we can finally have, after 15 years, the entirety of Eriador connected contiguously, with the exception of Ettenmoors, which is its own little island. So that connection is hugely important to me, and I'm really excited we were able to do it. A little sad that I myself did not get to do a lot of the construction of this region because I was off working on other things such as Erebor housing, as well as future updates down the road. But I'm really, really excited to see this region happen. I'm really, really excited to see it connected, and I'm really, really excited to kind of see those walls between the Shire and Ered Luin come down. So, without further ado, I want to start right off. Here we are in Needlehole in Original Shire, and those of you familiar with this region may notice a little bit of a difference here going on. We have pulled down the impassables between the Shire, particularly around Little Delving, between Little Delving and Needlehole, and made it a good, nice sloping hill from which you can access the Yondershire from. So, let's start our exploration. Needlehole itself has always been a way for people to get to Ered Luin through teleport, but now, with the inclusion of the Yondershire here, that teleport is kind of going away. Now, if you were to go through this gate over here, whether it's by stables or just through, exploring, you'll just go right into the Yondershire. You're not going to end up teleporting to Ered Luin. I hope we've pulled this out. We'll see. So away we go. And there we are. We are now on our way up to the Yondershire. So the Yondershire has kind of 3 or 4 unique settings for itself. It's pretty heavily forested through a lot of it. There's a lot of moorland, and there's a lot of open fields and farmland. So trying to make it a little bit more shirey, but also have it feel a little bit more wild, because it's the furthest reaches of the Shire, at least to the west and north, as far as the west and north goes. So things here are a little bit more rough and tumble. The hobbits here are a little bit more of a hardier stock, and a little bit more independent from the rest of the Shire. We're running through the town of No Bottle here, and one of the things we'll do too is I think we'll explore through No Bottle to the south. We'll loop up north, probably head to the northeast here, so we can kind of see how it connects with Evendim as well, and then head further west so that we can take a look at Ered Luin, and then we'll take a look at some of the new taverns and interiors that are coming with the region. So it's always kind of nice getting back to the Hobbit stuff. There's a lot of like whimsy and fun, and just like being able to build something that isn't supremely dire. You know, I think after so many years of just war and war and war and war, you know, coming back to Hobbit troubles. Oh, and my client just crashed. So we're gonna restart this again and see if we can get back in. And while I'm doing that, I'll take a look and see what we have for some questions. Scrolling back up. So, Talarian, again, if I pronounce anyone's name incorrectly, I apologize. Will Yondershire affect chicken play since we need to go to Ered Luin on the chicken? Just making sure you take a look at time limits. So that's a question that we can extend to content to see if there are any adjustments that need to happen there. The nice thing about this edition is chicken play you'd now be able to run all the way from Thorin's Hall all the way to Mordor, provided you had the protection to do so. Squirrel asks, with the new topographical maps as opposed to the hand-drawn, how come those maps are so late connected and enabled? Oh, alright. Client crashed again, so there's an issue there that I'm running into. So let's try the 32-bit client instead. How come those maps are so late connected enabled in the progress, 2 to 3 weeks before the update goes live? So a lot of that is us wanting to make sure that we have the latest version of the landscape available for our UI artist to do what he needs to do to get the map in. It certainly is helpful to have them earlier on from a development perspective, but also if the landscape is constantly changing as we're working on it, it's a lot of extra work to kind of go through and remake the map over and over again as we update the maps, as we update the radar, as we update the landscape. So that's why they tend to come in a little bit later than usual. Think of it as, at least as far as Bullroar previews go, think of it as an opportunity to explore the land. There we go. Think of it as an opportunity to explore things without having to be bothered by the map. I'm just kidding there, but I think I need to let's add source and there we go. All right. Wouldn't be a stream without some technical difficulties. So Ionar says, so this makes a land link between the Shire and Ered Luin? Yes, it does. Finley first says, when you get in, are you able to pull up the map for a minute to show exactly where it is? So I don't believe we have the map in yet, but so for Eriador, we've got the Shire here, you know, and Mickle Delving's kind of anchoring the Shire off in the west, and then we have Ered Luin here, which is, we've got like Kellendim and whatnot in the east. And basically between Kellendim and Mickle Delving, kind of a little bit along the north, is where the Yondershire is. So Sackby says, hope those crashes will not be on the live server. Oftentimes, crashes like what I experienced just now are related to admin client functionality, and are things that are usually ignored by retail clients. So we don't have to worry um, quite as much about those crashes happening for our retail clients. Um, so here we are, a little bit more of a rolling hill situation through the Yondershire here. Grasslands, farmlands, and then some moorlands over here to the south. One thing that I think I want to do is talk with the designers who are working on this and see if we can get some more flowers put into the grasslands here, because they're feeling a little neglected, a little empty. And luckily that's fairly easy for us to do, and I think it would help this feel a little bit more shirey. Druidsfire asks, is it a concern that players go from level 15-ish Arid Lewin to level 20-ish Yondershire before they get to the Shire proper? So in theory, and I'm not exactly sure how the content folks are vectoring players into the Yondershire when that kind of information is suggested or recommended to players. But typically, the current content flow is you do the content in the Shire, in Arid Lewin, and then you're encouraged to go to Breetown. And there are ways to get to Breetown. Particularly if you're in Arid Lewin, there are ways to get to Breetown that are much more convenient than traveling over landscape. You can go to Kellendim, you can go to Thorin's Hall, and you can ride the stable to Breetown. And I think our expectation is, if a player isn't quite at that level yet, they'll journey in that way. Why do some areas have non-combat critters but others do not? How are critters selected for an area? So, in areas where we expect there to be combat, and there are some areas, particularly here in the south, which I believe we're calling Foxheath Den, as well as the Old Links, where the enemies here are, intentionally intended to be a little bit more passive and a little bit non-threatening, and there are story purposes for that. Again, I'm not going to go into the specifics of that because that's not my forte. That's a question for one of the content designers on the team, which may or may not include some spoilers. So I am going to gracefully decline answering anything specifically. However, in normal combat areas, normal areas where we expect to have combat, we like to try to have a mixture of aggressive, threatening, and passive creatures in order to allow kind of navigation of the landscape so that you're not feeling like you're always under attack. You might have the opportunity to feel threatened, walking through a boar camp where all of the boars just kind of turn and are threatening towards you, but you're not attacked outright, so you're not constantly always in combat, because that can be a really exhausting kind of experience if you're running somewhere and you're just always in combat, and it doesn't give you an opportunity to get back onto your mount either. So Gregor Parks asks, are there any plans for using higher res 16:9 maps in the future instead of the 4:3 ones that are used now? Any UI stuff is also something that is pretty specifically out of my purview. As far as resolution and whatnot goes, I know there is a desire and interest to investigate things like 4K support, but I don't have any details I can give you on that, and it wouldn't be my place to speak on any specifics anyways. Rooney Keeper says, thanks for Yondershire. It's great for a Hobbit roleplay community on Laurelin. Especially love the new inns and interiors. Any chance we can see the rest of the Shire get some updates? Some of it feels a bit underwhelming compared to the Yondershire now. Places like Tookborough, the interior, Buckland, feel like they should be much more given the families that live there. Hey, we have a deer running on the fence. That's fun. If there was time and opportunity for it, we could probably do that. Right now, our focus is pretty heavily on the Yondershire as well as next updates. So we don't have anything specifically planned for going back in and updating those older interiors, at least at this point. Particularly with the introduction of the attenuated lighting system that we added in, 2 years ago now, or even a little bit longer ago. Some of those older interiors could definitely use some attention and some support as far as lighting goes, and I think lighting can go a long ways towards helping places like that. But addressing those spaces is kind of a, like, when we have the time and opportunity to do so kind of thing. Liren asks, is the questing a repeat of the Shire, or does Yondershire introduce types of quests players have not done before? I'm not quite sure what you mean. I know that the intent from the design team, the content design team, was to have quests here that felt like they belonged in the Shire. So things here are going to be a little bit more lighthearted than if you were in Minas Morgul. And just what is available in terms of targets, is a little bit, lighter fare in comparison to the heavier stuff. That's not to say that there isn't going to be excitement or interest in drama in this, because if there's one thing that hobbits know, it is drama. One thing to note too, and this is something that Maid of Lions just sent me a message, is that, compared to when we originally made these quests in the Shire proper, 15 years ago, the tools available to the design team to make quests and make content have improved dramatically since then. So at the very least, there's going to be a more modern usage of the questing tools and the creation tools. But that's about as much as I can answer with that. Ivanar says, yes, I would think there's a great chance to revise those parts of the Shire, first the graphical resources, and then maybe parts of the map. I don't disagree. It's just time. And, we have a full slate for this year. We got a lot of big plans, and time is not always our ally. So Eros 216 says, I wandered through the area earlier today on Boror. It seems to be a much larger area than I expected. Was it just my perception, or is it larger than Wildwood and Mythithel? It is much larger than both of those. So Wildwood and Mythithel are what we kind of consider landscape expansions. They're an extra area being added to an existing region. So you can go to, you go to something like the Wildwood, you go to Mythithel, and it's like an extension of Bree or an extension of Trollshaws. In the Yondershire is almost, if not bigger than, the Shire itself. And some of the landscape that is covered in the Yondershire is not technically the Shire. It's more kind of like the borderlands between Erin Luin and the Shire. It's not the Far Downs, but it's kind of just like, it's out there. It's not areas that are really considered Shire. So it's big. It's a big region. And it's something that we wanted to do intentionally to kind of like highlight and celebrate the fact that, this is a big deal. This, adding this to the Shire is a big deal, and connecting the world itself is a big deal to us. It's important to us, and we're really excited that we were able to do this. And I think we're also really excited to be doing things that are a little bit less, heavy, as far as landscape building, as far as storytelling. We've been in a very intense few years of intense story and intense landscapes. Basically from Mordor. I mean, Gondor had its big epic experiences and whatnot, and then Mordor, and then the War of Three Peaks. It's just all just kind of this breakneck experience of building the world. And the nice thing about the Yondershire is it's a chance for us to kind of go at Hobbit pace for a little bit, kind of get out of the doom and gloom and direness, and be in something that is a little bit calmer and a little bit more friendly. So scroll down here a little bit more and answer a few more questions. Unless I missed it, there was no land link to Evendim other than heading east to Oatbarton. What about smoothing stuff down so you can get over the mountain towards Lake Evendim or Numinos? Right now, that's from Druidshire. Right now, our intent is to have the east road along the northern bounds to Oatbarton be the connection to Evendim. Evendim, it's technically considered part of Evendim as far as our game data is concerned. And that's where we felt the link was most important to have. There'd also be a considerable amount of extra world work needed to kind of make that connection to the north work in a way that felt good. We'll go up this way. So you'll pardon me too that as I run around here, I don't entirely know exactly where I'm going all the time. Like I said at the outset, I don't have I didn't spend a lot of time working on Yondershire before I had to go away, and go away to work on other things. And a lot of the work that I did here was largely kind of back-end support, developing mixed spawns, getting those placed, developing the travel routes for this area, which then got handed off to one of our other designers to finish up. So, don't mind me as I bumble around trying to figure out where to go, because I've actually have not been, on the ground very much in this region. So much like you all, I'm kind of an explorer here. Anarwen says, can you see the Tower Hills from the Yondershire? No, you cannot. We are not really introducing or teasing anything as far as the Far Downs and as the Tower Hills go, in part because I don't think we're really prepared for showing any of that stuff yet, and the art assets that we would need to support those things don't exist. We have some very, very, very old elf assets that have been around for 20 years now. And those old assets really don't do the game justice anymore. We need significantly more work in order to, kind of bring them up to par with what we would want to show off. So, I do like the feel of Longcleave. Love it when the chickens scatter. Fly, chickens, fly. Continuing down through the questions, you guys have a lot to chat about. Let's see. So Laren says, rephrase my question, if you've been through the Shire before, are we experiencing familiar quests, or are we seeing things unique to the Yondershire? So I think you'll see a bit of A, a bit of B. You're going to see, quests that are dealt with or built in more modern ways, but you're also going to see a lot of themes that are familiar to the Shire, because it's the Shire. You come to the Shire for a certain kind of experience, I think, and there are certain themes that go along with that. So Soft Snake asks, can we add more of the blossoming trees from the Arid Lewin side, sprinkle those into the western portion? It's something we can consider. We're still doing development and polish work, so there's opportunity for us to continue doing more additional things. Like I've got my own kind of like mental track notes of things that I would like to talk to the designers who are working on this space about as ideas to improve things. So Centurion Siles says, do you guys plan to make Linden map in the future? We do not have any specific plans for Linden currently. As with any region in the game, it's not something that I want to say we'll ever get to, but it is not, it is not on our immediate roadmap. So Runekeeper says, so any chance of Hobbit premium housing? I think we would love to do some Hobbit premium housing. There's no premium housing for Hobbits planned for this specific update. Not to say that there won't be in the future, but for right now, no plans for it. We're giving people some time with Erebor before we start introducing our next housing thing. We don't want to burn you all out on housing too quickly, especially with all of the new deco items that you have to play with. Don Xavier says, right now the Yondershire has only 4 Hobbit villages, which seems sparse for such a large area. Is this by design, or will we be adding more Hobbit villages later on? That is by design. There aren't a lot of Hobbit villages, actually, in this portion of the world. And what you see in-game, Gamich, Tyfield, Nobottle, and Longcleave, are really kind of the Hobbit villages here. I think part of why it might seem like there are fewer villages in the Yondershire than you might expect there to be is in part because the Shire itself is very condensed. There are a lot of villages in the main chunk of the Shire, and we represented a lot of them, but that representation was done in a much smaller space than I think we typically build towards nowadays. And that was intentionally done so that, we could give players a breadth of Shire experience without making it too big and making it too onerous for a new player to explore through it. With the Yondershire, it's a bit bigger now, and kind of think of the Yondershire as like the Shire's North Downs kind of thing, if you will. Like the North Downs doesn't have a ton of hubs in it. North Downs is, I think, much bigger than the Yondershire, but the idea kind of is the same. So Softsnake asks, can you please remove the invisible walls to the north of the Shire that connect to the Yondershire? That's something that we are considering and maybe working towards doing. I'd have to check in with our designers to see where they're at with that. But it's certainly something we're interested in doing to kind of help connect everything together. Edith Aldora says, will this be a free-to-play area? I'm not sure what the decision is on that. That would be a good question for Reninian to answer. So I highly encourage reaching out on the message boards with that question, as he's going to be better suited to answer that than I am. Lone Hobbit asks what level this area is. This is intended, the Yondershire is intended to be a level 20-ish area. Kind of your option to go to after you've finished your starter region, whether that's Eastern Breland or the Shire or Ered Luin. It's kind of your option to go to after those. Maybe you play around a little bit in the Breland until you hit level 20, and then you're able to come here and do the content here. Epic Bubble says, so does the Shire post not deliver to the Yondershire? I believe there is some content discussing that specific plot. So play the content and you'll see. So Druidsfire says, admittedly, it's always interesting and scary to change zones and run smack dab into a roving threat, like the time we took an unlevel Professor Corey through the portal to Dead Marshes. Yep. I think there's some value, too, in players kind of exploring around and realizing there might be a little bit out of their depth. And it's like a little bit of a motivator. Be like, whoa, that's like way tougher than I can manage, but it's it motivates you later to then be like, okay, I'm gonna go back when I'm higher level and just face roll this. So let's see, go down further. So Soft Snake GR says, how did we come up with the decision to bring another low level area after you already brought the angle and step away from endgame? So I think for us, we have an interest in trying to fill out the world, especially when we've been through this like heavy cycle of kind of death march to the end, to the end of to the raids and through like heavy intense storytelling, and I think for us as a team, we wanted to kind of go back and both like give ourselves a little bit of a breather, because it's a lot of work producing the work that we do. Building Gun to Bad was a lot of work. Building the story of the Legacy of Durin and the Trials of the Dwarves was a lot of work. And as much as we want to make fun things for you guys, we also want to do things that are fun and interesting for us as well. And there's a lot of interest on our side of like finding ways to grow the game and finding ways to give people that want to keep playing the game something new to do at lower levels, something new to experience on new characters that they make, and gives people a reason, give people who may be at that end game, and may not want to play through the same old stuff again, a reason, an opportunity to go back and make a new character and explore the world and experience something fresh. Because the top of the game, the level cap of the game, whenever something comes out for that, that's always going to be fresh to a player because it's always going to be new. But re-rolling or making a new character, the opportunities for freshness and for fresh experiences, the more characters you make, the fewer opportunities exist for that. It's always a little saddening to hear, about people who make a new character and then just like try to min-max so they can get to cap because that's where they know they're going to get their new stuff. And I think by us being able to go back and build out places like this, it shows that we have a very like broad and interesting world, and there's still more room to grow it, and there's still more opportunities for people to experience something new, in places that they thought they may not ever experience something new again. So, thus quote, the innkeeper asks, random question, is there a reason why you chose the Yondershire as the name rather than anything already in Tolkien, like instead of just putting it where South Farthing or Far Downs would be? So part of the reason why we chose the Yondershire is because this area is maybe a little bit Far Downs, but not completely Far Downs, and a little bit of within the bounds, but not completely within the bounds. So the area that we're filling in was a part of many different regions, and we needed a way to kind of label it without mislabeling parts of it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to pause here before continuing running along and dive into some more questions. We got an hour left on the stream. We're running a little bit extra longer on this one. So hopefully I'll be able to get through everything as I go at my pace. So we're going to go down through some questions, and I'll see if I can get through the queue before continuing on with the run. So Druid's Fire asks, I'm curious as to what the Hunter's Hall behind the clickable door is meant to be. It's a restricted space. Restricted spaces, that's a byproduct of this still being in development. eventually those spaces will become available to go in. Usually when something like that happens, it just means that we forgot to change a property when it was checked in. I highly encourage anyone who's playing on Borer to, if they run into instances like that, please file a bug on it. We probably already have it in our queue under something different, but it never hurts to make sure that we're aware of it. So Soft Snake says, I have so many questions. Here's another. Why a huge area like Yondershire offers only 20 to 30 range, but not making it 15 to 25, so players from both Arid Luin and the Shire can contiguously go to Yondershire. I'm not certain why that decision was made. Again, that's not. I haven't myself really had much of a hand in building this. I could see the argument being made for a little bit broader of a range, but I think the amount of content that's being presented here, it felt better to the team to kind of focus it more at that 20 plus range, because kind of the idea of our story sends you to Bree and kind of gets you onto the epic story on ramp, and then once you hit that kind of level 20 point, that's when you kind of like fragment off and can decide, okay, do I want to do Lone Lands, do I want to do North Downs, and then you have this as another option. So Two Kings Peter asks, when is this coming out again? I don't know a specific date. I believe sometime next month, but you would have to pay attention to announcements for specific timing. So will Arid Luin players start questing from the west side, or they have to travel to the Shire to get the quest from the east side? I don't know what the vector plan is for this. So that is something that you'll have to jump into Borer to test out and see for yourself. How will players be directed towards Yondershire? Again, another question regarding the vector. I'm not exactly certain how we're going to be vectoring here. At some point, I'm sure there will be either a region vector once you hit a certain level, or there will be NPCs that offer vectors to it. Those are usually our two standard methods for introducing players. So now that you've finally connected Arid Luin and the Shire, what's on my wish list to work on now? And I would say that I'm currently working on it, but I can't tell you what I'm working on. So, sorry to be coy, but one interesting bit of trivia here too was we had to actually physically move the instance for North Cotton Farm when we were building this, because North Cotton Farm is actually two physical spaces. There's the public space that you kind of get to through questing in Evendim, and then there's the instance, which is a copy of that landscape that was like kind of in this general area that we had to like pick up and move in order to make this landscape happen. Fingon is asking for higher content like 105 to 130. I think that's something that we're definitely wanting to do, and as part of our hope and plan to kind of keep filling out the world is to keep growing the number of options that are available. I think from a content flow perspective, like it's definitely, I think once you hit that kind of Gondor train, you have a very linear linear content progression. And it's easy, I think it's easy to kind of get to a point, particularly around like Wells of Anduin, Vales of Anduin, like there to Minas Morgul and whatnot, to have some options there, because there's a bit of overlap, or you are earning XP at a pace where you can kind of pick and choose. But I think our hope is to fill out other areas with similar things over time. Right now, we're just kind of focusing on some lower level stuff to give players lower level options. So let's see, as we go down through, I'm still catching up on all of the questions here. Keller Dancer says it can be really nice if you're slogging through correctly depressing scenery like Mordor and come to spend a day in the Shire as a breather. Yep, and I think that's what we're also thinking from a design and development perspective, where it's just like we've been doing all of this, and so we needed a little bit of a breather ourselves. Let's see. We'll continue down through here. So thus quote, the innkeeper says, "What is a vector quest?" So a vector quest is a quest that we often use to send players on to another part of the world. So say you finish at a quest hub and then you get a quest that says, "Great, you finished at this quest hub, now go to this other quest hub." Or, "Congratulations, you hit level 25, now go to this region." Those are vector quests. They're ways for us to, kind of suggest where players should go next. And they can come in different forms. Like I said, they can come in form of an NPC, they can come in form of something you get in your mail, they can come in the form of something that just like automatically pops up. So another question or another comment was a level 50-ish equivalent to Moria would be useful, and I don't disagree. Like I'm someone that if I had all the time in the world, I would love for us to have 2 to 3 start to cap viable leveling up tracks in the game, so that you can play through with multiple characters and not feel like you're just kind of slogging through the same experience over and over again. But that all takes time to build. All right, I think I'm almost all caught up with the chat. Lots of people chiming in on Vector Quest. Laren asks, "Does Yondershire have any instances?" It has some story instances, but it does not have any 3-player or 6-player challenge instances. And yeah, to follow up with the comment from our friend LOTRO stream, we don't want anyone to kind of take what we're doing here in the Yondershire as we are done with endgame. This is us kind of taking a breather ourselves, and kind of using this time as kind of an opportunity for us to build things that we're kind of interested in playing around with, try out some new things, see what player reactions to different kinds of content are, and see, honestly, like what a little bit of nostalgia can do, both for the player quality of life and our own quality of life, as far as the things that we're interested in building. And yes, Druid's Fire. It's not like we're not going to build. We're not going to stop forwarding on our narrative goals and our end game goals. Like, those are still things that are going to be supported. We're just taking a little bit of breather now to play around and do some things that are like not as intense for us, because after Legacy of Durin and after Gundabad, I think we could all use a little bit of a breather from all of that, because that's a lot of work, and we're all people. We're all people, and we're all wanting to be able to just have a little bit of downtime. And I think something like the Shire is an opportunity for us to still produce something new and exciting, but also give us a little bit of a break and a breather and experience. So we are now in Evendin, coming up on Oatbarton. So this is how we connect, over north of Greenfields and north of the Binbull Wood, which still remains one of my favorite forests in the game. And looking down over some of the monster camps that I built way back in the day. feels like so long ago, 15 years ago. Alright, many MMOs out there straight up end up neglecting low-level content for many years. It's all about the end game, so I applaud this move to mix things up a bit from Desmorno. And so yeah, and I think that's that's one of the things that we wanted to do too. Like one of the things that I was really hoping we'd have done, but ultimately didn't end up doing, was when we were building Wells of Anduin. Like I really wanted Wells of Anduin to be. I was really hoping we could make Wells of Anduin have been an alternate region as well, as opposed to a cap region, which it was at the time. And I think part of the tricky thing about introducing new regions at a level cap is you introduce multiples of them, and then ultimately they kind of sort of act like alternate regions. So you have things like the Wells of Anduin and Elderslade and Minas Morgul that all kind of exist as sort of counterparts for that level break, that like level 123 to 130-ish, level range. Even though, like, I think Wells of Anduin is a little bit lower level and that sort of thing. So let's see. Will the Stable Master route from Needlehole to Dweeland go through the Yondershire with non-fast travel route? That is the plan, Mr. Conflict. Unlike what we did in the Trollshaws, the travel plan for the Yondershire is a little bit less aggressive. Originally, and had I had time for it, I did want to do a full revamp of Shire travel, but add in some more stable routes too, because there are some fairly significant towns in the Shire that don't have stables, but that was going to require pretty major rework, and that's something that we didn't really have time for. Our goal for the Shire and ostensibly Yondershire is to have all existing stable masters in the Shire and Yondershire connect through slow and swift travel to all other hubs in the Shire and Yondershire. And then hubs that, stable masters that are kind of on the edges of regions would connect to adjacent regions. So unfortunately that means that I think, I'm not sure what the current plan is for Needlehole. If we were sticking to our current methodology for travel, Needlehole would probably lose its Dweeland travel routes, and Tyfield and Gamich would pick up Dweeland instead. But I'm not sure what is currently being designed. I did some high-level work for travel for this region, and then had handed it off so I can move on to my next effort. So you shouldn't need to rediscover new routes because the overhaul is not significant enough to require it. The reason why the Trollshaws required rediscovery was because it was a flat-out like major overhaul with brand new routes and brand new sections of routes, and we had to punch holes in existing segments, and so the effort required to maintain existing stuff was going to be much greater than just allowing it to than just requiring new discovery, fresh discovery. So Steely Dad asked, did the development of the Yondershire coincide with the decision that led to the revamping of the free-to-play changes, or is it incidental? It's shrewd timing. Whatever the case, new players are going to love exploring the Shire. More is good. It was completely independent. Yondershire has been something that we have planned to do ever since the spring of last year, and we wanted to kind of hold on to it as our 15th anniversary celebration of everything. Like, we wanted to come back to the Shire, we wanted to fill out the world, we wanted to connect the world, and we wanted that to be part of our 15th anniversary. So we'd been kind of sitting on it while we were waiting to finish up the work needed to complete Gundabad and the Trials of Durin and the Legacy of Dwarves. Happy coincidence, we'll call it that. Let's see. So Doymaster420 says, "Hey Scenario, great to see my favorite quest zone get a new region added. So glad to see more lovely hobbits." I think that echoes very much what everyone here working on it was feeling as well. So happy to see more Shire. All right, I want to go up to these ruins. So speaking of losing travel routes and gaining them, thank you to whoever did the Rivendell stable to make swift travel to Gwingris and Icha Dunan without having to complete the Oregon story deed, only discovery. Yeah, so that was the so Gwingris. I was kind of considering that a major hub and major starting point for Oregon, so it made sense to kind of maintain that. And Icha Dunan has a serious epic story component to it, and having to do those multiple hops to get there would have just been uncomfortable. That's part of the reason too why there's now a stable master outside of the Last Lonely House as well, was because we wanted to be able to. I wanted me personally, after having played through the game so many times, I wanted to be able to quickly and easily get access to the Last Homely House. I had even considered moving where the stables were to be more central to Rivendell. So instead of having that extra route or extra stable, having just the main stable be more centralized. But there's a lot of content associated with the stables that I didn't really want to mess with. So just adding the extra one made sense. Thus quote the innkeeper, will Yondershire have Shire music or something new? I believe it's got something new in the works. Bill Champagne, our musician, who is awesome and all of his music rocks, I believe is working on some new tracks for the Yondershire. But that said, I still think that the Shire tracks also hold up very well and do a great job of expressing the character of the Shire. Magus Charisse says, I would really enjoy some secret dungeons with non-essential quests, outfits, rewards, secret bosses, which reward you for exploring a new area. I think those always kind of fall into the, if we have time for them, Easter egg kind of thing. Stuff like that is, especially considering the pace that we work at, it's hard to justify building anything too elaborate without having some sort of substantial content support behind it. So then at that point, it kind of stops being an Easter egg and starts becoming a content feature. I think the thing that I'm working on right now, there may be some opportunities for that, but I don't want to say or promise anything specifically on that front. Let's see, go down through the year a little bit more. Can the Southbury Stable Masters stop requiring level 40 to get to Rivendell? That's something we can look into. Part of the reason why those requirements are there is the expected player level for those spaces. We don't really want low-level players going to a place that they're ill-prepared for, or they're not going to be able to really experience. And I know that there is, to some degree, this thought that Rivendell, being kind of a major place, is a place that anyone should be able to get to. But it's also a space that the content, if you were to go there at level 10, there wouldn't really be anything for you to do there. You step outside of the bounds of the city itself, and you're likely just going to flat out die. And we put these things in here to kind of help keep new players from being frustrated. Will far-ranging stable masters get more Shire locations then? So the way we intend far-ranging stables to work is they're kind of reserved for capitals. So the Shire, its capital is Michael Delving or Mitchell Delving, and so when you see a far-ranging stable master going to the Shire, it's always going to be that. It's always going to be Mitchell Delving. It's not going to be other areas. But the idea being that from there, you can then get to wherever else you want to go in the Shire. I Let the Dogs Out Woof asks, can you show the map? The map is not currently implemented in this build, so I cannot show it to you, unfortunately. Let's see. Lots of love for Floyd and DeWitt in here, it seems like. I don't think we have any plans for them in this region, but I could be surprised. I don't know everything that the designers have been doing here. You can add more new missions, packs like Bilbo's Adventures, alternative to instances for Lobby locations, more activities besides quests and festivals, maybe Gollum's Adventures from code lines. And I think, so that point brings up one of the things where I think that's where things like the mission system is interesting to us as an opportunity to allow, to both allow low-level players to experience high-level or cap spaces, those environments, without being the level for it, because the missions will scale to them. And it's also a way for lower-level areas to still remain somewhat relevant to high-level players. So like the missions in the Wildwood, for example, those missions still remain relevant to level cap players. They may not be the most pressing or important content for those players to do, but they can run those missions and experience the landscape of that region at a level that's appropriate to them. So we're slowly working our way to the west. We're now effectively outside of the Shire. That stone wall a little while back that I walked past, that was the bounds of the Shire. So now we're kind of in this wild land in between the Shire and Arid Luin. Excuse me. Morbindir asks, will there be roving threats in Yondershire? I don't believe there are plans for roving threats in the Yondershire. So we're reading through a few more things. So Laren asks, does Update 33 introduce any new graphics updates like Update 29? Refresh my memory on graphics updates for Update 29. Update 33 is not doing anything specific, as far as I'm aware, for graphical improvement outside of any ongoing performance work that our engineering team is working on. And I can't speak to any specifics of what they've been working on because they're engineering, and that's not something that I work on. So are Bilbo's missions available at level 20, but so that is true, and knowing that is something that we can take in consideration, possibly adjust the level on it for. So Soft Snake says this area, so I'm in the furthest west part, is the area that could use more of the blossoming trees, and I don't disagree. It's something that we can talk with our designers about and see what we have as far as time available. And thank you for the reminder to drink some water. It's been a little bit a while. There we go. All right, and pardon for that large snuff. So for those of you, let's run over here real quick. So those of you that are heavily familiar with everything should know where this is. Oh, we are definitely going to need to put a wall here. I should not be able to get in here right now. So I am going to need to make sure to remind people about this. We're just going to rocket jump out of here.